Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Kuo, and today we'll be talking about endocrine physiology. The endocrine system interacts closely with our nervous system. And recall from your anatomy course, the organs of the endocrine system. They are a dispersed group of ductless glands. So their secretions, instead of being secreted through ducts, they're actually released into blood. And so they secrete messenger molecules called hormones. Endocrinology is the study of hormones and endocrine glands. So take a moment to pause the slide and review these locations of these endocrine glands. Hormones. So what are hormones? Well, hormones are defined by the fact that they, instead of being released into ducts, they're actually released into blood vessels and sometimes lymphatic vessels. So they travel through blood and can circulate throughout the body. So wherever blood vessels can reach, hormones will be able to reach as well. And they influence only specific tissue cells, meaning they have target cells, okay? And a hormone can have different effects on different target cells. As we mentioned in a previous lecture, whether or not a target organ respond in a certain way depends very much on the receptors that are present on that target tissue. And this image here shows that the circulating hormone, once released into blood and it reaches a target cell, right? There are certain hormones that exert their effect by binding to a cell surface receptor, a membrane receptor. Okay. While other hormones, usually the lipophilic ones, are actually able to cross the plasma membrane and act on some cytosolic or nuclear receptor. So there are three types of endocrine gland stimuli. In other words, there are three types of stimuli that can trigger the release of hormones. The first of which is humoral stimulus. Humoral stimulus refers to the control of hormone release in response to changes in extracellular fluid, such as a change in the level of nutrient or ion concentration in the blood. Okay. So an example given here is that the release of parathyroid hormone from parathyroid glands is triggered by a drop in the calcium level in blood. Okay. So the low calcium in blood is sensed by parathyroid glands, and that triggers this gland to release parathyroid hormone. Okay. And then parathyroid hormone then acts to actually increase blood calcium. Okay, but here we're referring specifically to the fact that the trigger for parathyroid hormone release is a low calcium in blood. Now, the second type of hormone release stimulus is the neural stimulus. Okay, this is where hormone release is caused by a neural input. So the example we have here shows in the adrenal medulla action potentials in preganglionic sympathetic fibers, triggers the release of epinephrine and norepinephrine. Okay, and those neurotransmitters as well as hormones. Okay, I mean epinephrine and norepinephrine. Functionally, they are both neurotransmitter as well as hormones. They're released into blood, and then they can travel to different places in the body. Okay. The third type of stimulus for hormone release is a hormonal one. So this is an interesting concept because we got a hormone triggering the release of another hormone. Okay. And This is oftentimes seen as an interaction between hypothalamus and anterior pituitary, along with other endocrine glands. So this is a relationship that we will explore in more detail in later this lecture. Okay, so in this example, you can see that the anterior pituitary gland secretes hormones that then stimulate other endocrine glands to secrete hormones. Okay, and similarly, hypothalamus also releases hormones that triggers the anterior pituitary to release hormone. Okay. Now we're going to first talk about pituitary gland in more detail. This is just a quick review of anatomy of the endocrine system. And pituitary gland, also known as hypophysis, we call that as hypophysis means undergrowth. It's located, well, somewhere inside the brain, right? That's all you have to know for physiology, but that's all the anatomy you have to know for physiology. But recall that anterior pituitary is made up of glandular tissue. So it's an endocrine gland of epithelial tissue. Okay. Adeno is referring to the glandular tissue in anterior pituitary. So adenohypophysis. Posterior pituitary, also known as neurohypophysis. Okay. It is actually an extension of neural tissue. So now we're going to take a look at the hormones secreted by each. First, we're going to take a look at anterior pituitary. So these are the important hormones secreted by the anterior pituitary that you should be aware of. And I like to use the mnemonic flat pig. Okay, FSH, LH, ACTH, TSH, PRL, which stands for prolactin, GH is growth hormone. Follicle stimulating hormone, luteinizing hormone, adrenocorticotropic hormone, thyroid stimulating hormone. Just say these again and again, and you'll get used to these terms. Okay, so tropic hormones. What are tropic hormones? This is actually a concept that we discussed a few slides ago. Recall that the third type of hormonal release trigger is the hormonal stimulus, right? Where a hormone triggers the release of another hormone. So those hormones that trigger release of other hormones is what we call tropic hormones. Okay. So in other words, hormones that regulate the secretion of hormones by other endocrine glands. Okay. So the concept is illustrated in this figure over here. We say that this is the anterior pituitary. It secretes a hormone, which when bound to the target organ, okay, it causes the target organ to secrete another hormone. Okay, so this hormone that triggers this other endocrine gland to also secrete hormone, okay, is called a tropic hormone. But similarly, if we have a hormone that actually inhibits this gland from its secretion of hormones, we also can call that a tropic hormone. Let's take a closer look at the hormones secreted by the anterior pituitary. We've got our flat pig, F, L, A, T, P, and G. Okay. So let's start with ACTH, adrenocorticotropic hormone. Okay. This hormone is secreted by the anterior pituitary, which then travels through blood, goes to our adrenal cortex, it binds to the adrenal cortex, and causing the adrenal cortex to release corticosteroids. Okay, and corticosteroids are hormones that help our body cope with stress. So you can see here that ACTH, because it causes this endocrine gland called adrenal cortex to release a hormone. So ACTH is considered a tropic hormone. Okay. Similarly, for TSH, LH, and FSH. And by the way, gonadotropins is a term used to refer to LH and FSH together. Okay. And adrenocorticotropic hormone is also known by the name of corticotropin. And TSH is also known by the name of thyrotropin. And think about that. Tropin, okay, thyrotropin, corticotropin, gonadotropin. Those are referring to the very fact that these are tropic hormones. Okay. So TSH stimulates thyroid to release thyroid hormone, which then has an important role in regulation of metabolic rate. Whereas gonadotropins, okay, LH and FSH stimulate the gonads, that means testes in men, ovaries in women, leading to the secretion of sex hormones as well as maturation of sex cells. Okay, so in these cases, ACTH, TSH, and LH, FSH, these are all examples of tropic hormones. So why are these prolactin and growth hormone, why are they not tropic hormones? Take a moment to think about that. You can pause this video. Okay. So the reason why prolactin and growth hormone are not tropic hormones is because their action on their target organ don't trigger the release of another hormone. So prolactin binds to mammary glands and trigger milk production, but milk is not a hormone. Okay. Similarly, growth hormone binds to bones and lead to bone growth. So there isn't hormone release that's triggered as a result. Okay. So this is a very important concept of tropic hormones. Okay. So once again, as we just discussed, gonadotropins refer to follicle stimulating hormone, FSH, as well as luteinizing hormone, LH. This LH sometimes also known by the name of lutropin. Okay, again, the tropin is referring to it being a tropic hormone. Adrenocorticotropic hormone, also known as corticotropin. Okay. Thyroid stimulating hormone, TSH, also known by the name of thyrotropin. These are tropic hormones. Okay, so it's important to have the distinction, to know the distinction between tropic versus trophic, because these two terms are very easily confused with one another. Tropic, PIC, as we discussed, is a hormone that causes secretion of a hormone from another endocrine gland. Okay. On the other hand, trophic with PHIC are hormones that induces growth on the tissue that it binds to. Okay. So an example, the thyroid stimulating hormone or thyrotropin, when it binds to thyroid, it not only causes thyroid hormone release, but it also stimulates the thyroid to grow in size. Okay, so the fact that it triggers thyroid hormone release makes it a tropic hormone. But the fact that it also stimulates the thyroid to increase in size and number of cells, that makes it also a tropic hormone. So you can actually be tropic as well as trophic at the same time. But being one doesn't equate to being the other. Okay, so ACTH is yet another example where it's both tropic and trophic. Moving on to talking about hypothalamic control of the anterior pituitary. So our hypothalamus secretes releasing hormones as well as inhibiting hormones. These are classes of hormones that have either a positive effect or a negative effect on the anterior pituitary. So the hormones secreted by hypothalamus that stimulates anterior pituitary to secrete hormones, those are called releasing hormones. And there are a number of them. Inhibiting hormones do the opposite. They inhibit hormone secretion by the anterior pituitary. Okay. So understanding the definition of tropic hormone, you can see that releasing hormones as well as inhibiting hormones are also tropic hormones. Okay, because they cause anterior pituitary to increase or decrease in secretion of hormones. All right, quiz question. Which structure secretes releasing hormones? So pause this video and think about this. Are you ready for the answer? The answer is A, hypothalamus. So if you didn't get that, you should probably rewind and watch the previous slides. Moving on. Okay, so we talked about the concept of releasing hormones and inhibiting hormones. Now, what are these specific releasing hormones and inhibiting hormones? Well, we've got CRH, which stands for corticotropin releasing hormone. Okay, it's not that complicated. It just means it causes the release of corticotropin. And remember what corticotropin is. Corticotropin is ACTH. So it causes the release of corticotropin. Okay. Thyrotropin releasing hormone, TRH, causes the release of thyrotropin. Thyrotropin meaning TSH. Okay. So these, as well as GnRH, these are all examples of releasing hormones secreted by the hypothalamus that induces and triggers the release of these corresponding hormones from the anterior pituitary. Okay. So GnRH, gonadotropin releasing hormones. Likewise, it triggers the release of gonadotropins, meaning LH and FSH. And we also have gonadotropin inhibiting hormones, which do the opposite. Okay, and similarly, these hormones you don't have to know. Okay, but understand that we have similar, we see similar relationships between these different hypothalamic and pituitary hormones. Okay. So take a moment, again, pause this video, and I want you to count how many of these hormones listed here are tropic hormones. Are you ready for the answer? All right, so let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Is that how many you counted as well? Okay, so these, of course, they, since they also influence the secretion of these hormones from anterior pituitary, so that makes these tropic hormones. But these prolactin and growth hormone, they don't cause the secretion of hormones from the target organs. Okay, so that means they are not tropic hormones. Okay. Here's another question for you. Which of the following are tropic hormones? select all that apply. So take a moment to pause the video so you can think through this. Are you ready? So ACTH, it is a tropic hormone because it causes the secretion of corticosteroids. FSH, yes, it is. It causes secretion of sex hormones. Okay. CRH, corticotropin releasing hormone. So yes, it causes the secretion of corticotropins, which is ACTH. Okay. Thyroid hormone, it's not a tropic hormone. Prolactin, also not tropic hormone. Next question, which of the following binds to and stimulates the thyroid gland? So once again, pause this video so you can think through this. Now, are you ready? Okay, the answer is TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone, also known as thyrotropin. This is the hormone secreted by anterior pituitary. It travels through blood, gets to thyroid, binds to thyroid, and then stimulates the thyroid gland to secrete thyroid hormone. Now let's take a look at how the hypothalamic releasing hormones and inhibiting hormones get to the anterior pituitary. So the hypothalamic hormones get to the anterior pituitary through specialized blood vessels, which is the hypophyseal portal system. Okay. And so this is a portal system. Recall from anatomy, a portal system is a system of two capillary beds lying in series. Okay, so instead of going from artery down to capillary and then into the venous system, okay, we have the arterial blood entering into one capillary bed, and then before it gets to the venous side of the system, it goes through a second capillary bed. Okay, so this is what a portal system is. Okay, so in this case, we see that the hypothalamic neurons, they synthesize and secrete releasing hormones and inhibiting hormones, okay, which are then released into this first capillary bed. And through blood flow, these releasing hormones, inhibiting hormones get to the anterior pituitary, where it binds to the anterior pituitary and stimulates the anterior pituitary to then secrete these hormones. Okay. This image just illustrates the exact same thing of releasing hormones, inhibiting hormones. Okay. Releasing RH and IH into the portal system, the hypophyseal portal system, which then gets carried, okay, to anterior pituitary, and then causing the release of these respective hormones. Okay, and this differs from the triggering of posterior pituitary of their release of their hormones. Okay, so this is something we'll take a look at in the next few minutes. This slide just shows, again, the same thing and emphasizing that anterior pituitary is a true endocrine gland because, as we discussed, it secretes these 6 classic hormones.